I woke in the hospital to the smell of disinfectant and the low beep of monitors somewhere down the corridor. My ribs screamed with every shallow breath, a sharp reminder of Ryan's fists connecting with my torso 5 hours earlier. The fight had been about nothing, everything, the usual pattern, burnt chicken. A text message from a coworker he decided was suspicious. His voice rising, mine shrinking, Megan crying from her bedroom down the hall. Then his hands. I tried to sit up and nearly blacked out from the pain radiating through my chest. The nurse had said 3 ribs, maybe 4, badly bruised if not cracked. Rest, ice, pain medication I couldn't afford. I'd signed myself out against medical advice because the bill was already climbing past $300, and every minute in this bed added more zeros I didn't have. My phone sat on the small rolling table beside me. Screen dark. I grabbed it with trembling fingers and pressed the power button. 2:47 a.m. My shift at the Bellini mansion started at 6 con, and I needed to be there. 5 years I'd worked for Franco Bellini, 5 years of steady paychecks that kept me and Megan in our small apartment, kept food on the table, kept us surviving. Missing a single day without notice would be grounds for dismissal. I knew the rules. I dialed home. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. Panic clawed at my throat, sharper than the pain in my ribs. I tried again. Nothing. Where was Megan? Mrs. Mitchell? A different nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand, tired eyes scanning my chart. You really shouldn't be trying to leave yet. The doctor wants to observe you for at least another few hours. I need to go home. My voice came out rough, damaged. My daughter is alone. Your daughter left about 2 hours ago. Said she was going to get some things from home and would be back. Ice flooded my veins. She left? She's 12. You let a 12-year-old leave the hospital alone at midnight? The nurse's expression tightened defensively. She said she was going back to your apartment and that your neighbor would be meeting her out front to bring clothes for you. She was calm, oriented, and very insistent. Was I supposed to physically restrain a child? I was already pulling the IV from my arm, ignoring the nurse's protests, ignoring the way the room tilted dangerously when I stood. Megan didn't have an aunt. Megan had lied to get out of the hospital, which meant she had a plan, which meant something had gone terribly wrong. The nurse blocked my path. Mrs. Mitchell, you're in no condition to move. I didn't recognize my own voice. I need to find my daughter. She stepped aside, still protesting, but I was already stumbling toward the elevator, one hand pressed against my ribs, the other clutching my phone like it might suddenly provide answers. I tried Megan again as the elevator descended. Voicemail. I tried our apartment. Nothing. Then my brain caught up with my panic, and I realized with horrible clarity where Megan had gone. She'd gone to work for me. Franco Bellini's mansion sat in an exclusive neighborhood I could never afford to live in. All manicured lawns and security gates, and money that whispered instead of shouted. I'd taken 3 buses to get there in the early hours, each jolt sending fresh agony through my damaged ribs. By the time I reached the service entrance at the back of the property, I was crying from pain and fear in equal measure. But I was too late. The kitchen lights blazed through the windows, and I could see movement inside. Multiple figures. My hand shook as I reached for the door handle, terrified of what I'd find, when it opened from the inside. Anthony, Mr. Bellini's driver, stood there in his usual dark suit, expression carefully neutral. He'd driven me home after late shifts more times than I could count. Always polite, always professional, always slightly intimidating. Mrs. Mitchell. He didn't sound surprised to see me. Mr. Bellini was about to send me to collect you. Megan. She's safe. Inside with Mr. Bellini. He held the door wider, gesturing for me to enter. Please. I stumbled past him into the kitchen I'd cleaned 1,000 times, and stopped cold. Megan sat at the small breakfast table in the corner, wrapped in what looked like one of the expensive throw blankets from the living room, a mug of something steaming in her hands. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing the mottled purple and yellow bruises that ringed both her thin wrists. Defensive wounds, from trying to stop Ryan from hitting me. And standing beside her, one hand resting lightly on the back of her chair in a gesture that was both protective and possessive, was Franco Bellini himself. I'd worked for him for 5 years and could count on one hand the number of times we'd actually spoken beyond basic pleasantries. He was a ghost in his own home, appearing and disappearing at odd hours, always surrounded by men in suits who watched everything with cold, calculating eyes. I'd learned quickly not to ask questions, not to linger, not to exist beyond the cleaning and the cooking and the absolute discretion that my employment required. Now he was looking directly at me with eyes so dark they were almost black, and I felt pinned by that gaze like an insect under glass. Mrs. Mitchell. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it that made my skin prickle with wariness. Please sit down before you fall down. I wanted to argue, to grab Megan and run, to apologize for whatever trouble she'd caused. But my legs were shaking too badly to hold me upright anymore. I collapsed into the chair across from my daughter, and only Anthony's quick reflexes kept me from sliding straight to the floor. Megan. I reached across the table for her hand. Baby, what were you thinking? You couldn't go to work. Her voice was small but steady, those green eyes so much like mine meeting my gaze without flinching. You couldn't miss your shift or you'd get fired, so I came instead. You're 12 years old. I know how to clean the kitchen. I know the routine. I've helped you 1,000,000 times on weekends. Her chin lifted slightly, defiant. I thought if I just did tonight, you could come back tomorrow when you felt better, and everything would be okay. Nothing about this is okay. But even as I said it, I knew she'd been trying to save us the only way she knew how. Trying to protect the fragile stability that was all we had. Mrs. Mitchell. Franco Bellini's voice cut through my rising panic like a knife. Your daughter told me what happened. About Ryan Foster. About the pattern of abuse that's been ongoing for 8 months. About why you were in the hospital tonight. Shame burned through me, hot and acidic. I looked down at the table, unable to meet those penetrating dark eyes. I'm sorry she bothered you with our problems. It won't happen again. I'll make sure. Look at me. It wasn't a request. I forced my head up, forced myself to meet his gaze, and saw something there that made my breath catch. Rage. Cold, controlled, absolutely lethal rage. I'm going to ask you a question, he said, each word precisely measured. And I need you to answer honestly. How long would you have continued to let him hurt you before it killed you? Before it killed Megan? My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because I didn't have an answer. Because I'd been asking myself the same question for months and couldn't find the courage to face the truth. Mom tried to leave twice. Megan's voice was too adult, too knowing for a 12-year-old. He found her both times. Said he'd make sure she never worked again. That he'd tell everyone she was crazy. That no one would believe her. Megan, I started, but Franco held up one hand, silencing me. Did he put his hands on you? He asked my daughter directly, gaze dropping to the bruises on her wrists. Did he hurt you? Megan's jaw tightened. Only when I got in the way. When I tried to stop him from hurting Mom. I watched Franco Bellini's expression go absolutely blank. Watched his hands curl into fists at his sides. Watched him take a long, slow breath before speaking again. Anthony, bring the car around. We're taking Mrs. Mitchell back to the hospital to make sure she's been properly treated. Then she and Megan are staying here in the guest wing until this situation is resolved. Mr. Bellini, I can't possibly... You will. He finally looked at me again, and what I saw in his face made me stop talking mid-sentence. You and your daughter are now under my protection. Ryan Foster will never touch either of you again. Is that clear? I don't understand. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Why would you help us? For a long moment he didn't answer. Just studied me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Then he crouched down beside Megan's chair, bringing himself to her eye level. How long have you been coming here with your mother? He asked her gently. Since I was 7. 5 years. Megan didn't look away from him. Mom needed help on weekends sometimes, so I'd come and help her clean. You were never here those days. I know. I travel often for business. He paused. Do you like it here? She nodded slowly. It's quiet, safe. Mom is less scared when we're here. He reached out carefully, telegraphing his movements, and pushed her sleeve down to cover the bruises on her wrist. You won't have to be scared anymore. Not here, not anywhere. Do you believe me? I wanted to protest, To say he couldn't make promises like that, to protect my daughter from disappointment when this powerful man inevitably lost interest in our problems. But Megan was nodding, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "I believe you." Franco stood, his expression shifting back to that controlled neutrality I'd seen so many times over the years. "Anthony, the car. Now. And call Dr. Russo. Tell him I need him at the house within the hour." "Right away, sir." Anthony disappeared through the kitchen door. I tried one more time. "Mr. Bellini, this is too much. I can't accept—" "You're not accepting charity." His tone left no room for argument. "You're accepting reality. The reality is that you and Megan are staying here until I personally ensure that Ryan Foster is no longer a threat. The reality is that you will not be working while you recover from your injuries. The reality is that I take care of the people in my household. And you've been part of this household for 5 years, whether you realized it or not. I'm just the maid." The words slipped out before I could stop them. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You stopped being just the maid the moment your daughter walked into my kitchen at 2 a.m. with bruises on her arms, trying to save your job. Now you're both under my protection, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. Are we clear, Mrs. Mitchell?" I nodded, too overwhelmed to argue anymore. "Yes, we're clear." "Good." He turned toward the doorway, then paused. "And Mrs. Mitchell, my name is Franco. If we're going to be sharing a household temporarily, we might as well dispense with the excessive formality." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with Megan in the kitchen, where I'd spent 5 years making myself invisible, trying to survive, trying to protect my daughter from the consequences of my terrible choices. Megan reached across the table and took my hand. "It's going to be okay now, Mom." "I know it is." I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that a powerful man I barely knew would actually help us, would actually keep us safe, but I'd believed in safety before, with Ryan, and look where that had gotten us. Still, as I sat in Franco Bellini's kitchen with my daughter's small hand in mine, I felt the first fragile stirring of something I hadn't felt in 8 long months. Hope. Anthony drove us back to the hospital in silence, the pre-dawn streets of New York empty and slick with condensation. I sat in the back seat with Megan curled against my side, her head on my shoulder, finally asleep after the chaos of the past few hours. My hand rested protectively on her hair, feeling each rise and fall of her breath. Through the tinted window, I watched the city slide past, familiar and foreign at the same time. How many times had I ridden these streets in Ryan's truck, making excuses for bruises, practicing smiles that would convince neighbors everything was fine? How many times had I told myself it would get better, that I just needed to try harder, be quieter, make fewer mistakes? The hospital emergency room was quieter now, the worst of the overnight rush having passed. A doctor I didn't recognize examined me more thoroughly this time, ordered x-rays, confirmed what the first physician had suspected. 3 ribs badly bruised, 1 possibly fractured, 2 weeks minimum of rest and pain management. Absolutely no strenuous activity. The bruising on your abdomen suggests repeated trauma over an extended period, the doctor said, her tone carefully neutral, but her eyes sympathetic. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm required to report suspected domestic violence. Would you like to speak with a social worker?" My immediate instinct was to refuse, to protect what little control I still had over my situation. But then I thought of Franco Bellini's dark eyes, the cold rage in his voice when he'd asked how long I would let Ryan hurt us. I thought of Megan trying to save my job by cleaning his kitchen at 2 a.m., her thin arms covered in fingerprint bruises. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I would." The social worker was a woman in her 40s named Patricia Wells, with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that somehow made me feel safer rather than judged. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything. 8 months of escalating violence, 2 failed attempts to leave, Ryan's threats about making sure I never worked again, about telling everyone I was unstable, about taking Megan away from me. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" Patricia asked when I finished. "Family? Friends? My employer has offered to let us stay at his home temporarily." Until the situation is resolved. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Your employer? And you trust this person? I thought about that for a long moment. Did I trust Franco Bellini? I barely knew him, but I remembered the way he'd crouched beside Megan's chair, the gentleness in his voice when he'd spoken to her, the absolute conviction when he'd promised she wouldn't have to be scared anymore. Yes, I said finally. I think I do. Patricia made notes on her tablet. I'm going to file this report and connect you with resources. A restraining order would be advisable, though I have to be honest with you. They're not always effective. If Ryan violates it, he can be arrested, but that doesn't prevent the initial violation. I understand. There are also shelters, support groups, legal aid services. I'll give you a packet of information before you leave. She looked up at me. Mrs. Mitchell, you did the right thing by telling someone. Whatever happens next, remember that. None of this is your fault. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak past the lump in my throat. By the time we returned to Franco's mansion, the sun had started to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Anthony pulled into the circular driveway at the front of the house, rather than the service entrance I always used. A subtle shift. A silent message that my role here had changed. Franco met us at the door, still dressed in the same dark shirt and trousers from hours earlier. He looked at me with those penetrating eyes, assessing my condition. The doctor confirmed the ribs? He asked. 3 badly bruised, possibly 1 fractured. 2 weeks of rest. Good. Dr. Russo will be here shortly to examine you both again and set up a treatment plan. He stepped aside to let us enter. Megan, there's a bedroom prepared for you upstairs. 3rd floor, 2nd door on the left. Sophia, yours is across the hall. Sophia, not Mrs. Mitchell. The informality felt strange, intimate in a way that made me uncomfortable. Mr. Bellini, Franco. His tone left no room for argument. We discussed this already. Franco, I corrected, the name foreign on my tongue. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, but I need to understand. Why? You don't owe us anything. He was quiet for a moment, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away. Finally, he spoke. 5 years ago, you started working for me. You were efficient, discreet, and invisible. Exactly what I needed in my household. He paused. But I noticed things. The way you organized the kitchen to maximum efficiency. The fact that you always brought books with you and read during your breaks. The careful way you handled my mother's antiques. Like you understood their value beyond price. I stared at him. Stunned. I'd thought I was invisible here. Just another employee in a household run by dangerous men conducting dangerous business. I noticed when you started bringing Megan on weekends, he continued, how she would help you quietly, never touching anything she shouldn't, always polite to the staff. I noticed when you stopped smiling, when you started wearing longer sleeves even in summer, when you flinched if someone approached too quickly. Shame flooded through me again, hot and acidic. You knew. All this time you knew, and you didn't. I suspected. I didn't know. There's a difference. His jaw tightened. I respected your privacy, perhaps too much. But the moment Megan walked into my kitchen with those bruises on her arms, everything changed. She is a child. A child who tried to protect her mother by working in the middle of the night. That kind of courage deserves protection. You both deserve protection. Megan had come to stand beside me, listening to every word. She slipped her hand into mine and squeezed. Thank you, I whispered, not knowing what else to say. Franco nodded once. Then his attention shifted to Megan. Are you hungry? Giuseppe, my chef, is preparing breakfast. He was very impressed by how well you cleaned his kitchen earlier. Megan's eyes widened. I didn't mess anything up, did I? On the contrary, he said you left it spotless. Better than some of the night staff manage. A hint of a smile touched Franco's mouth, transforming his severe features into something almost warm. He's making French toast. I believe that's a favorite of yours? How did you know? I pay attention. He gestured toward the hallway. Go ahead. Giuseppe is waiting for you in the kitchen. Tell him I said to give you extra strawberries. Megan hesitated, looking at me for permission. I nodded. and she disappeared down the corridor, her footsteps light and quick, leaving me alone with Franco Bellini in the marble-floored foyer of his mansion. "You should rest," he said, his voice gentler now. "Dr. Russo will be here within the hour. He'll examine you both, prescribe appropriate medication, and set up a follow-up schedule. I can't afford— You're not paying." He held up a hand to forestall my protest. "Consider it part of your employment benefits. Retroactive health coverage for services related to workplace safety. This wasn't workplace related. You couldn't come to work because of injuries sustained in a domestic violence situation. That impacts my household operations. Therefore, it's my concern." The logic was thin, but his tone made it clear he wasn't open to debate. "Sophia, I know accepting help is difficult, but right now, you need to focus on healing, both physically and otherwise. Let me handle the logistics. What about Ryan?" The question came out small, frightened. "He'll come looking for us. He always does." Franco's expression went cold again, that controlled rage I'd seen earlier returning to his eyes. "Let him try. This property has security systems that would make a bank vault jealous. No one gets onto these grounds without my knowledge. And if Ryan Foster is stupid enough to attempt it, he'll find himself dealing with people far less patient than I am." A chill ran down my spine, because I believed him. Whatever Franco Bellini was, whatever dangerous business he conducted in the shadows of his expensive life, he meant every word. Ryan would not reach us here. "Now," Franco said, his voice returning to that careful neutrality. "Go upstairs. Shower, change into something comfortable. There are clothes in your room, selected by my housekeeper based on sizes from your personnel file. If anything doesn't fit properly, let her know and she'll have it corrected." "You bought me clothes?" "I had clothes acquired for you. There's a difference." He turned toward his office. "We'll discuss longer-term arrangements later, after you've rested and Dr. Russo has examined you. For now, just focus on being here. Being safe." I wanted to argue more, to assert some control over my rapidly changing circumstances, but exhaustion was pulling at me, the adrenaline that had kept me going for the past 6 hours finally depleting. My ribs ached with every breath, and my head felt stuffed with cotton. "Okay," I agreed. "Thank you, Franco." He paused in his office doorway, looking back at me over his shoulder. "You're welcome, Sophia." The bedroom he'd given me was beautiful. Not ostentatious, but clearly expensive. A 4-poster bed with soft cream linens, a window seat overlooking the gardens, an ensuite bathroom with a clawfoot tub and separate shower, and in the closet, exactly as he'd said, an array of clothing in my size, simple pieces in neutral colors, comfortable and well-made. I stripped off the hospital gown I'd been wearing under my jacket and stepped into the shower, letting hot water cascade over my aching body. The bruises on my torso were spectacular, purple and black and yellow, a road map of Ryan's fists. I touched them gently, cataloging each injury, each moment of violence I'd endured. No more, I promised myself. No more letting him hurt me. No more making excuses. No more being afraid. When I emerged from the bathroom in soft cotton pajamas, I found Dr. Russo had arrived. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes, and he examined me with professional efficiency. "The hospital did good work," he said, making notes on his tablet. "The x-rays show no fracture, just severe bruising. I'm prescribing pain medication, anti-inflammatory, and a muscle relaxer to help you sleep. You'll need complete rest for at least a week, then gradual return to normal activity. No lifting, no bending, no strenuous movement." "What about Megan?" I asked. "Should she be examined too?" "I already saw her. Physically, she's fine. The bruises are superficial and healing well, but I'm recommending she see a therapist who specializes in childhood trauma. Franco has already arranged for someone to come here twice a week. At times that won't interfere with school." Of course he had. Franco seemed to have thought of everything while I was still trying to catch up with reality. Dr. Russo handed me a bag of medications with detailed instructions. "Get some sleep, Sophia. Your body needs it to heal. And if you experience any worsening symptoms, sharp pains, difficulty breathing, anything concerning, you call me immediately." Franco has my private number. After he left, I crawled into the impossibly comfortable bed, every muscle in my body screaming with relief. Through the door, I could hear Megan's voice, bright and animated, talking to someone. Giuseppe, probably, or maybe Franco. She sounded happy, actually happy, not the careful, controlled happiness she'd learned to fake around Ryan. I closed my eyes, intending to rest for just a few minutes before checking on her. I didn't wake up until the sun was setting outside my window, 12 hours lost to exhausted sleep. And when I finally emerged, groggy and disoriented, I found Megan curled up in the window seat of my room, reading a book she must have brought from downstairs. "Mom," she looked up with a smile. "You're awake. Franco said to let you sleep as long as you needed. Are you hungry? Giuseppe made soup. He says it's good for healing." I pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of my bruised ribs. "I love you so much, baby. You know that, right?" "I know." She hugged me back, fierce and tight. "I love you too. And Mom, I think we're going to be okay now. I really do." Looking around the beautiful room, hearing the safety and certainty in my daughter's voice, I let myself believe her. The first morning in Franco's home felt surreal in its quietness. I woke in the guest room with sunlight filtering through curtains that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to, my body aching in places I'd grown accustomed to ignoring. The silence was what struck me most. No shouting, no waiting for the sound of Ryan's footsteps, no calculating which version of him I'd face today. Just birds outside the window and the distant sound of someone moving in the kitchen below. Megan was already awake when I found her, sitting at the massive kitchen island with a plate of fresh fruit and pastries that looked like they belonged in a magazine. She smiled when she saw me. A real smile, not the careful ones she'd learned to wear around Ryan. "Giuseppe made these," she said, holding up a croissant. "He's teaching me how to make them later. Did you know you have to fold the dough 27 times? The man in question appeared from the pantry, older with silver streaked through dark hair, an apron dusted with flour. "Signora Sofia," he greeted me with warmth that seemed genuine. "Mr. Bellini said you are to eat whatever you want. Your daughter, she has good hands for baking. Natural talent." I watched Megan's face light up at the compliment, something tightening in my chest. When was the last time someone had praised her for anything? When had she last felt safe enough to simply be a child? The days developed their own rhythm, strange but somehow comforting. I was under strict orders from Franco not to work, an instruction that felt both foreign and oddly liberating. For 8 months, I'd lived in constant motion, working, appeasing Ryan, protecting Megan, never allowing myself to simply exist. Now I had no choice but to heal. Franco himself was a presence I couldn't quite define. He left early most mornings, returning at unpredictable hours, always in those impeccable suits that screamed controlled danger. But when he was home, especially when Megan was around, something in him shifted. The hard edges softened just enough to let warmth through. On the third afternoon, I found them in the kitchen together. Megan was elbow-deep in dough, flour coating her arms up to her elbows and somehow streaked across her cheek. Giuseppe was explaining something in rapid Italian, gesturing with his hands, while Franco stood to the side watching with an expression I'd never seen on him before. He was almost smiling, the corner of his mouth lifted in something that looked dangerously close to contentment. "You have to feel it," Giuseppe was saying, taking Megan's hands and guiding them through the dough. "Not think, feel. The dough tells you when it's ready." "Like this?" Megan pressed her palms into the mixture, concentration fierce on her young face. "Perfetto," Giuseppe beamed. "Mr. Bellini, you see? Natural baker." Franco's eyes met mine across the kitchen, something passing between us that made my breath catch. He saw what I saw. My daughter coming back to life in a space that should terrify us, but somehow felt safer than anywhere we'd been. "Your mother is watching," Franco said to Megan, his voice carrying that low quality that always made me hyper-aware of him. "Show her what Giuseppe taught you." Megan launched into an enthusiastic explanation of focaccia bread, her hands moving as she spoke, so animated and alive that tears pricked my eyes. This was the child I'd been trying to protect, the one who disappeared under Ryan's shadow. She was still there, just waiting for space to breathe. Franco noticed my tears. I knew he did, but he said nothing, just watched me with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. That night, after Megan was asleep, I found Franco in his study, papers spread across a massive desk, a glass of amber liquid beside his hand. He looked up when I entered, something guarded in his expression. "Thank you," I said simply. "For Giuseppe. For letting her be a child again. For everything. You don't need to thank me for basic humanity, Sophia." The way he said my name, like he was tasting it, made something flutter in my stomach that I had no business feeling. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. What you're doing. Most people aren't me. Not arrogant, just fact. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "How are your ribs?" "Better. Still sore, but better. The doctor will come again tomorrow. Make sure you're healing properly." I should have left then, gone back to my room, maintained the careful distance between employer and employee that this situation demanded. But something kept me rooted there, watching this dangerous man who'd shown my daughter more kindness in 3 days than her own mother's boyfriend had in 8 months. "She's happy here," I said finally. "I've never seen her this relaxed. Children need stability, safety." His jaw tightened. "They need to know the adults around them won't hurt them." The implication hung heavy between us. Everything he knew about Ryan, about what we'd endured. I waited for judgment that never came. The 5th day shattered our fragile peace with all the violence of Ryan's return. I was upstairs helping Megan with homework when I heard the shouting. My body went cold, that familiar freeze response kicking in before my brain could fully process what was happening. Ryan's voice carried through the house, slurred with alcohol and fury, demanding to see his girls. Megan's face went white. "Mom? Stay here," I ordered. But she was already shaking, that terrible tremor I knew too well starting in her hands. I made it downstairs to find Ryan being restrained by 2 of Franco's security men. Not roughly, but firmly, keeping him from entering further. He looked worse than I remembered. Unshaven, wild-eyed, reeking of whiskey even from a distance. "Sophia," he shouted when he saw me. "Tell these goons to let me go. You're coming home, both of you. I forgive you for running, okay? I forgive you." The presumption of it, the ownership in his tone, made rage bloom in my chest. But years of survival instinct kept my voice level. "We're not coming back, Ryan. Leave." "The hell you're not." His voice rose, aggressive and threatening in exactly the way that used to make me placate him. "You're mine, Sophia. You don't get to just leave. She's not property." Franco's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I hadn't heard him approach, but suddenly he was there, positioned between Ryan and me, authority radiating from every line of his body. "You need to leave. Now." Ryan's eyes focused on Franco for the first time, some animal instinct finally recognizing real danger. But the alcohol made him stupid. "Who the hell are you? Her new boyfriend? You're welcome to the bitch, man, but the kid comes with me. That's my—" The security guard's hand tightened on Ryan's arm, a clear warning. Franco hadn't moved, but something in the air had shifted, gone predatory and cold. "You have 3 seconds to leave my property," Franco said, voice deadly quiet, "or I'll have you removed in a way you won't enjoy." Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but one look at Franco's face seemed to penetrate even his drunken bravado. The security men escorted him out, his protests fading as they reached the front door. I stood frozen in the hallway, shaking with reaction I couldn't quite name. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Relief. Rage. The overwhelming weight of months of terror finally crashing down. "Sophia." Franco's voice, gentler now. "Are you—" "Megan." The name escaped me in a gasp. I ran for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time despite my ribs screaming protest. I found her in the closet of her room, small body curled into the corner, hands over her ears, eyes squeezed shut, hyperventilating, lost in panic that was all too familiar. "Baby, I'm here." I crawled in beside her, ignoring the pain in my chest, wrapping my arms around her shaking form. "He's gone, Megan. He's gone and you're safe." "I heard him." She sobbed against my shoulder. "I heard him yelling, and I thought, I know, sweetheart. I know." But she couldn't stop shaking. couldn't catch her breath properly, and something inside me that had been cracking for months finally broke completely. This was my daughter, my child who should never have had to learn what fear tasted like, who should have spent her childhood worrying about homework and friendships, not calculating which rooms in the house had the best hiding spots. I held her until the panic subsided into exhausted trembling, until her breathing evened out enough that I could pull back and look at her tear-stained face. Megan, listen to me. This ends now. Do you understand? One way or another, Ryan will never scare you again. Something must have shown in my voice because her eyes went wide. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. I left her with a promise to return soon and went looking for Franco. I found him in his study, standing at the window with his back to the door, tension evident in every line of his body. Franco. He turned, and I saw it then. The careful control barely containing something violent underneath. Is she all right? No. The word came out harder than intended. She had a panic attack. She's 12 years old, and she was hiding in a closet because she heard the man who's been terrorizing us for months. She's not all right, and she won't be all right as long as Ryan Foster exists in our orbit. Franco's jaw tightened. Sophia, do whatever you need to do. I cut him off, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I don't care what it takes, what methods you use, what consequences come from it. Get him away from us. Permanently. Silence stretched between us, heavy with implication. Franco crossed the room slowly, stopping just in front of me. Do you understand what you're asking me? I understand exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking the most dangerous man I know to use that danger to protect my daughter, to make Ryan disappear from our lives in whatever way ensures he never comes back. There are legal ways that take time we don't have, that require lawyers and courts and restraining orders that men like Ryan ignore. I met his eyes directly. You told me once that while we're under your roof, we're safe. Make that true. Make it permanent. Franco studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. If I do this, there's no going back. You'll have to live with the knowledge of what I've done, who I am, what I'm capable of. I already know who you are. I've known since the first night. You think I don't understand what it means that 2 phone calls from you made my hospital bills disappear? That security guards appear and disappear like shadows? That people in your world defer to you with the kind of respect born from fear? I stepped closer. I know exactly who you are, Franco Bellini. And right now, that's exactly who I need. His eyes searched mine, looking for hesitation he wouldn't find. I won't kill him. Not unless he forces my hand. But I will make sure he never comes near you or Megan again. He'll leave this city, this state, and he won't come back. How? Do you really want those details? I thought about it. About moral lines I'd never imagined crossing. About the woman I used to be who believed in justice systems and proper channels. Then I thought about Megan shaking in that closet. No, I just want results. Franco nodded slowly. It'll take a few days to compile everything I need. Evidence, leverage, pressure points. I'll use legal channels first. Make it clear that prison is waiting if he doesn't cooperate. Only if he refuses will other methods become necessary. Whatever it takes. Sophia. His hand rose, hovering near my face but not quite touching. May I hold you? The question caught me off guard. The careful request for permission from a man who could take whatever he wanted. The contrast between his power and his restraint did something to me, made my eyes burn with tears I'd been holding back. Yes, his arms came around me carefully, mindful of my injuries, and I let myself collapse against his chest. For the first time in years, possibly since David died, I felt truly protected. Not because I was weak or needed saving, but because someone with the power to act had chosen to use it for me. I've got you, Franco murmured against my hair. Both of you. I promise. I believed him. God help me. I believed him completely. We stayed like that for several minutes, my face pressed against his chest, his heartbeat steady under my ear. When I finally pulled back, his hands lingered on my arms, warm and solid. I should check on Megan. I said, not quite ready to break the moment, but needing to. Of course. I'll have Giuseppe make her favorite pasta for dinner. Sometimes comfort food helps after trauma. The casual understanding, the immediate shift to caring for my daughter's needs, made my chest ache. You're very good at this. Taking care of people. Only people I care about. His thumb brushed across my arm, barely there, but I felt it everywhere. Get some rest, Sophia. Tomorrow I start making Ryan Foster's life very difficult. I nodded and turned to leave, but his voice stopped me at the door. Sophia, you were right to ask me. No one threatens what's mine. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened me. Instead, they made me feel safer than I had in years. That night, after Megan finally fell asleep clutching my hand, I couldn't settle. My mind kept replaying Ryan's face, his voice, the way Megan had looked so small in that closet. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and wandered downstairs, finding Franco exactly where I expected, in his study with paper spread across his desk and a glass of whiskey. He looked up when I entered, unsurprised. Can't sleep? Too much in my head. Sit. He poured a second glass, sliding it across the desk to me. Drink. It helps. I took the chair across from him, accepting the whiskey. It burned going down, but the warmth that followed was welcome. Tell me about him, Franco said after a moment. Your husband. The request surprised me. David? You mentioned he died 8 years ago, that you've been alone since then, except for making the mistake of Ryan. I looked into my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. David was a police officer. Good man. Dedicated. Believed in protecting people. He died in a shooting during a routine traffic stop. Megan was 4. The old grief was there, but duller now. Worn smooth by time. I shut down after. Focused entirely on surviving, on raising Megan, on just getting through each day. I didn't date, didn't let anyone close. For 7 years, it was just us. Until Ryan. Until I got so desperately lonely that I mistook attention for affection. He seemed normal at first. Stable. Safe. By the time I realized what he really was, I was already trapped. Franco leaned back in his chair, studying me. You're not trapped anymore. No. Thanks to you. Why did you come to me tonight, Sophia? Really? I met his eyes across the desk. Because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. Because you're the only person who understands what today meant. Because... I trailed off, not quite ready to voice the rest. Because? He prompted gently. Because something's changing between us and I don't know what to do about it. Silence fell, charged with everything we weren't saying. Franco set down his glass deliberately. I noticed you the first day you came to work for me 5 years ago. Thought you were beautiful, capable, strong in quiet ways most people miss. But you were my employee, grieving, raising a child alone. I would never have acted on it. He paused. Then you showed up bleeding and terrified, and everything I felt became something else. Something protective and possessive and entirely inappropriate given the circumstances. My heart hammered against my ribs. Inappropriate how? You're vulnerable, Sophia. You're healing from trauma, dependent on my protection. Any move I make right now could be seen as taking advantage. What if I don't see it that way? His eyes darkened. What are you saying? I'm saying I know the difference between a man who wants to control me and a man who wants to protect me. I'm saying that when you held me today, I felt safer than I have in a decade. I'm saying... I took a breath. I'm saying I see you too, Franco. The man under the power, the one who smiles at my daughter covered in flour, who asks permission before touching me, who's methodically dismantling my nightmare because I asked him to. Sophia. My name sounded like a prayer and a warning. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. My world is dangerous. The life I lead, the choices I make, they're not ones most people can live with. I'm not most people. And your world can't be more dangerous than staying silent while my daughter learned to hide in closets. He stood, moving around the desk to where I sat. Up close, I could see the conflict in his eyes. Desire warring with restraint. I don't want to rush you into something you'll regret. I'm not asking you to rush anything. I'm just acknowledging what's here between us. We don't have to do anything about it tonight. I stood too, close enough to feel his heat. But don't pretend it doesn't exist. Franco's hand rose to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I won't pretend. Not with you. We stood like that for a moment, suspended in possibility, before I stepped back. I should try to sleep. Sophia. He caught my hand. Thank you. For what? For trusting me. For seeing me as more than what I do. For giving me a reason to want to be better. I squeezed his hand once before letting go. Thank you for giving us somewhere safe to land. I made it to the door before turning back one last time. Franco was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite name, but felt in every nerve ending. Good night, Franco. Good night, Sophia. Sleep well. I wouldn't sleep well. We both knew that. But as I climbed the stairs back to my room, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, blooming cautiously in my chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but the possibility of it. The understanding that maybe, just maybe, my daughter and I had found more than temporary shelter in Franco Bellini's home. Maybe we'd found a future. The second week brought a subtle shift in the household dynamics. Franco's team worked quietly in the background, gathering evidence against Ryan, while lawyers prepared documents I chose not to read too closely. For the first time since this began, I could breathe without waiting for the other shoe to drop. My ribs healed enough that I could move without wincing, and I found myself drifting back into familiar patterns, tidying spaces that didn't need tidying, organizing kitchens that were already perfect. Old habits from 5 years of employment here. You don't have to do that. Franco's voice came from the doorway as I reorganized his study bookshelf one afternoon. You're not staff anymore, Sophia. I turned to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I need to do something. Sitting idle makes me anxious. Then help me with something that matters. He gestured to fabric swatches spread across his desk. I'm renovating the East Wing guest rooms. Giuseppe insists the current colors are depressing. What do you think? It was such a small thing, asking my opinion on interior design. But it felt significant, like he was making space for me in his world beyond just shelter. This one. I touched a warm cream fabric. It's welcoming without being stark. You have good taste. He made a note. What about the library? I've been meaning to update it for years. We spent an hour discussing books and colors and furniture placement, conversation flowing easily between us. At some point, I realized we weren't talking about rooms anymore, but about futures, about permanence, about what it meant to make a house feel like home. The third week, Megan's therapy sessions began showing real progress. She smiled more, had fewer nightmares, started asking about returning to school properly rather than the homeschooling Franco had arranged temporarily. Watching her heal made something in my chest both lighter and heavier, grateful for her resilience while mourning what had been taken from her. Mom? She asked one afternoon while we walked through Franco's garden, a space I'd discovered brought peace when my thoughts grew too loud. Can I ask you something? Always, baby. Do you like Franco? Like him? I stopped walking, caught off guard by the directness. Why do you ask? Because you smile different now when he's around. And he looks at you the way Dad used to look at you in the old photos. She picked at a flower petal. Is that allowed? To like someone new after Dad? The question hit deeper than she knew. What do you think? Does it bother you? Megan considered this seriously, the way she approached everything these days. Dad's been gone a long time. I barely remember him except through stories. And Franco, he's nice to us, Mom. Really nice. He doesn't yell or get mad or hurt people he's supposed to protect. She looked up at me with those 2 old eyes. Can he be my dad? Like, a new one? My throat tightened. It's complicated, sweetheart. Franco's life, his work. It's not like other people's. You mean because he's dangerous? You know? I'm 12, not stupid. I know what kind of man has security guards and makes people scared just by looking at them. She shrugged. But he's never been dangerous to us. Actually, he's the only person who made us safe, out of the mouths of children, brutal truth delivered without filter. She was right. Franco had shown us more genuine protection than any supposedly safe person in our lives. If something happened between Franco and me, if we became more than just people living in the same house, how would you feel? Happy. No hesitation. I'd feel happy because you'd be happy. And maybe I'd have a dad again who actually wanted to be one. That conversation stayed with me through dinner, through Megan's bedtime routine, through the hours I spent trying to read in my room while my mind wandered. Around 11, I gave up and went searching for the one person I really wanted to talk to. I found Franco in the garden, where moonlight painted everything silver, standing by the fountain with something in his hands. As I approached, I saw it was a photograph, old and slightly faded. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." He looked up, and something vulnerable flickered across his face before his usual composure settled back into place. "You're not interrupting. Join me." I moved to stand beside him, close enough to see the photo clearly. A woman with dark hair and Franco's eyes smiled out from the frame, elegant even in the casual setting. "Your mother?" "Elena Bellini. Died when I was 15. His voice was steady, but something underneath it wasn't. Brain aneurysm. One moment she was laughing at breakfast, the next she was gone. No warning, no chance to prepare. "I'm sorry." My father never recovered. He threw himself into the business, into building his empire. And he brought me with him, taught me everything about power and control and never showing weakness. Franco traced his mother's face in the photo. He taught me that loving someone deeply meant giving them the power to destroy you, so I never let anyone close enough to hurt me. The confession hung in the night air between us, weighted with years of deliberate isolation. Until now, I ventured softly. Until I found a woman bleeding in my foyer and her daughter washing dishes at 2 a.m, and something in me broke that I can't seem to fix. He finally looked at me directly. "You terrify me, Sophia. Not because of who you are, but because of what you make me feel." "What do I make you feel?" "Vulnerable. Like I'd burn down the entire city to keep you and Megan safe. Like maybe my father was wrong, and some things are worth the risk of pain." His hand rose to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met. Not because you never broke, but because you're choosing to heal." I leaned into his touch, letting myself feel the warmth of it. "I lost my husband 8 years ago. David was a good man, a police officer who believed in protecting people the right way, through laws and justice. He died during a routine traffic stop, shot by someone he'd pulled over for a broken taillight. The old grief was there, but different now, worn smooth by time. I shut down completely after. Focused everything on survival, on raising Megan, on just getting through each day without falling apart. For 7 years, I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, that being alone was safer than risking loss again. Until Ryan. Until I got so desperately lonely that I mistook any attention for affection. I knew something was wrong almost immediately, but I was already trapped. Pride, fear, shame, they all kept me silent longer than they should have. I met Franco's eyes. Can I forgive myself for that? For the months I let Megan live in fear, because I was too broken to see clearly? You're asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether you can forgive yourself. It's whether you understand that survival sometimes requires choices that look like weakness, but are actually strength. His other hand came up to frame my face completely. You got yourself and Megan out. You found help. You're standing here healing instead of hiding. That's not weakness, Sophia. That's courage. Something in me cracked open at those words. Permission I hadn't known I needed to stop carrying guilt like armor. Franco, Mom? Megan's voice came from the garden door, sleepy and confused. I had a bad dream. Franco dropped his hands immediately, giving me space to go to my daughter. I'll make tea, he said quietly. The kind that helps with sleep. I gathered Megan close, feeling her trembling slightly. What was the dream about? Ryan. He was taking me away and you couldn't stop him. Her fingers clutched my shirt. It felt so real. It wasn't real, baby. Ryan's gone and he's never coming back. Promise? I promise. Franco returned with warm milk and honey, crouching down to Megan's level. Your mother's right. I've made certain Ryan Foster will never bother either of you again. Do you believe me? Megan studied his face with that serious intensity she'd developed. Yes. You don't lie. Never to you or your mother. Now drink this, and let Sophia take you back to bed. After Megan was settled and finally asleep again, I returned to the garden, but Franco was gone. I found him instead in the library, surrounded by law books and papers spread across every surface. "Research?" I asked from the doorway, ensuring every detail of Ryan's departure is airtight. "I don't leave loose ends." I crossed the room, drawn by something I couldn't name, and sat in the chair beside his, close enough that our arms nearly touched. "Thank you for earlier. With Megan. She's a remarkable child. You raised her well. She asked me today if you could be her father. Her new father." Franco went very still. "What did you tell her? That it's complicated, that your life is dangerous, that I don't know what we're doing here." I turned to face him fully. "But I want to figure it out. This thing between us. I want to explore it even knowing all the reasons it's impossible. Sophia, if we do this, there's no going back. My world will touch yours in ways that might hurt you. Your world already touched mine. You saved us from something that would have killed one or both of us eventually. Whatever complications come from caring about you, they can't be worse than what we escaped." His hand found mine on the armrest, fingers threading through fingers. "I'm falling in love with you. I've been fighting it for weeks, trying to be honorable and give you space to heal. But I'm losing that fight." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What if I don't want you to fight it? Then we'd be fools together. A mafia boss and a widow with a daughter, trying to build something real from circumstances that should have kept us strangers forever." "Maybe the best things come from impossible circumstances." Franco lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like a promise. "Stay with me. Not as a guest or someone I'm protecting, but as someone I'm choosing. Choose me back. I already have." The truth of it settled in my chest. "I think I chose you the moment you asked permission to hold me. The moment you cared about my daughter's terror more than your own convenience. The moment you showed me that power doesn't have to mean pain." We sat like that for a long time, hands clasped. No more words needed. Outside the window, dawn was beginning to break, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. A choice made in honesty rather than desperation. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. 1 month after that rainy night at 2 a.m., Franco called me to his study with an expression I couldn't quite read. Professional, controlled, but underneath it something that looked almost like satisfaction. "It's done," he said simply, gesturing for me to sit. "Ryan Foster signed everything this morning. He's leaving New York today, and he won't be back." The relief hit me so suddenly I had to grip the armrest to steady myself. "What happened? What did you do?" Franco slid a folder across his desk, thick with documentation I barely wanted to touch. My investigators were thorough. Photographs of every bruise you had over the last 8 months, taken by your neighbor, Mrs. Harris, who was documenting everything in case you needed help. Hospital records from 3 different emergency rooms, testimonies from Ryan's coworkers about his violent temper and drinking, and gambling debts totaling $45,000 that he'd been hiding from you. $45,000? I'd had no idea. I bought those debts. Then I had my lawyers compile everything into a case that would guarantee him years in prison for domestic violence, assault, and child endangerment. Franco's voice was matter of fact, like he was discussing weather rather than destroying someone's life. Ryan was given a choice. Sign documents permanently renouncing any rights or contact with you and Megan, accept $15,000 to start over in another state and disappear, or face prosecution and have his debts called in by people far less patient than loan sharks. You gave him money? That seemed wrong somehow. Enough to ensure he has no excuse to come back. Men like Ryan, they're predators, but they're also cowards. When confronted with real power, real consequences, they fold. Franco leaned back in his chair. He signed everything, Sophia. Full custody to you, restraining order that follows him anywhere in the country, agreement never to contact either of you again. It's legally binding and backed by resources he can't fight. I stared at the folder, at the physical proof that my nightmare was over. Did you hurt him? No, I didn't need to. The threat of what I could do was enough. His dark eyes held mine steadily. Are you asking if I would have? If he'd refused to cooperate? Was I? Did I want to know the answer? I don't know what I'm asking. Then I'll tell you the truth, and you can decide how you feel about it. Franco stood, moving around the desk to lean against it closer to where I sat. If Ryan Foster had refused this offer, if he'd insisted on fighting for access to you or Megan, I would have made him disappear in ways that don't involve paperwork or lawyers, because I will not tolerate threats to people under my protection. The honesty should have frightened me. This was confirmation of everything I'd suspected about who Franco really was, what he was capable of. But all I felt was a bone-deep relief that someone with that kind of power had chosen to use it for me. I should feel conflicted about this, I said quietly. About what you did, how you did it. I should worry about the morality of coercion and threats. But you don't. But I don't. I met his eyes. All I feel is grateful that my daughter won't spend the rest of her childhood looking over her shoulder, that I can breathe without calculating exit routes, that you cared enough to make this happen. Something shifted in Franco's expression, the professional mask cracking to reveal raw emotion underneath. Sophia, I need you to understand something. What I did wasn't just about protection or obligation. I wanted Ryan gone because the thought of him anywhere near you makes me violent in ways I can barely control. Because He stopped, jaw tightening. Because what? Because I've fallen in love with you and I can't have threats to my peace of mind walking around free. The confession hung between us, weighty and undeniable. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood, closing the distance between us until we were nearly touching. Say that again. I love you. No hesitation this time. I love you and your daughter, and the life I'm imagining building with both of you. And I know it's too soon, and you're still healing, and I have no right to feel this way, but I can't. I kissed him, rose up on my toes and pressed my lips to his, cutting off his words with action instead. For a heartbeat he froze, surprised. Then his arms came around me and he kissed me back with an intensity that stole my breath. It wasn't gentle. Franco kissed like he did everything else, with total commitment and barely leashed control. His hands framed my face, angling my head to deepen the kiss. And I felt the weeks of tension between us finally breaking open into something urgent and real. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. That was your choice, he said, voice rough. You kissed me first. I need you to know that. Need you to understand. I would never have pushed. I know. I touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against my palm. That's why I did it. Because you've spent a month showing me what it means to be with someone who respects my choices, even when they have the power to take them away. Sophia, my name sounded like a prayer. I want you completely. Want you in my bed and my life and my future. But I won't rush you. What if I'm done waiting? The words came out braver than I felt. What if I'm ready to choose this? Choose you, right now. His eyes searched mine, looking for doubt he wouldn't find. Your ribs are healed enough. Franco, I'm not made of glass. I won't shatter if you touch me. No, he agreed, thumb brushing across my lower lip. You're made of something far stronger. That's what terrifies me. We stood like that for a long moment, balanced on the edge of everything changing, before Franco stepped back. Tonight we tell Megan that Ryan's gone. We celebrate that you're both finally safe. And then, he let the implication hang. And then I'm going to spend every day showing you what it means to be loved by someone who would burn down the world to keep you. That evening, we told Megan over dinner that Giuseppe had prepared specially. Pasta carbonara that she'd helped make, garlic bread, a small cake with "New Beginning" written in careful frosting letters. Ryan signed papers today, Franco explained gently to Megan. He agreed to leave New York permanently and never contact you or your mother again. It's legally binding, which means if he breaks that agreement, he goes to prison. Megan's face cycled through several emotions: relief, disbelief, cautious hope. He's really gone? Forever? Forever, I confirmed, reaching for her hand across the table. You never have to see him or think about him again. Did you hurt him? She asked Franco directly, that too-old wisdom in her young eyes. No. I made him understand that hurting people I care about comes with consequences he couldn't afford to face. Franco's answer was honest without being graphic. Your mother and I decided together how to handle this, and we chose the path that kept everyone safe while ensuring your security. Megan processed this with her usual seriousness, then surprised us both by asking, "Are you and Mom together now? Like, dating?" Franco and I exchanged glances. "Would that bother you if we were?" I asked carefully. "Are you kidding? I asked you about this weeks ago, Mom. I've been waiting for you to figure it out." She rolled her eyes with perfect preteen exasperation. "Franco's nice and he makes you smile. Plus, he taught me how to make focaccia. That's basically dad material right there." Franco's laugh was surprised and genuine, transforming his face. "Dad material because of focaccia? The bar's not that high after Ryan," Megan said with brutal honesty. "You're already better just by not being terrible." After dinner, after Megan went to bed with Giuseppe reading her a story about Roman mythology, Franco and I walked through the garden under a moon so full it painted everything silver. "Thank you," I said into the quiet night, "for everything you've done, everything you've given us. I would do anything for you." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "For both of you. You understand that, yes? That you've become the most important thing in my life. I'm beginning to." I moved into his space, letting myself touch him freely for the first time. My hands slid up his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and steady under my palms. "Franco, I'm ready. For whatever comes next, for all of it. I choose this. I choose you." His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. "I need to hear you say it. Need to know this is real. I love you." The words felt right. True. Like something I'd been holding back without realizing. "I love you, and I trust you. And I want to build a life with you, even knowing how complicated that life might be." Franco kissed me then, and this time there was promise in it. Heat and possession and devotion all wrapped together. His arms came around me carefully, mindful of my healing ribs. But there was nothing careful about the way he kissed me, like he was claiming something precious. We didn't sleep together that night. We weren't quite there yet, both understanding that some things deserved patience. But we stood in the garden until the moon set, wrapped in each other, making promises without words about the future we were choosing together. When we finally went inside, Franco walked me to my door, pressed one more kiss to my forehead, and whispered, "Tomorrow I'm going to start showing you what forever looks like." I believed him. For the first time in years, I believed in forevers again. The month that followed Ryan's departure felt like learning to breathe again. I was no longer staff, no longer the quiet woman who cleaned Franco's home and disappeared into the background. I was his partner, a shift that required adjusting to in ways I hadn't anticipated. "You'll come with me tonight," Franco said one morning over coffee, casual as if he was suggesting a walk rather than asking me to attend a business dinner with associates whose names I recognized from news reports. "Wear something elegant. These men need to understand you're under my protection." "Franco, I don't have anything elegant enough for—" A dress box appeared on my bed that afternoon, deep emerald silk that fit like it had been made for me, which I realized when I found the tailor's card inside. It had been. The thoughtfulness of it, the care taken to ensure I felt confident rather than out of place, made my chest ache in ways I was still learning to accept. The dinner was everything I'd expected, and nothing like it. Men in expensive suits, who radiated controlled danger, conversations that danced around illegal activities without ever naming them directly. And through it all, Franco's hand on the small of my back, claiming me to a world that could have swallowed me whole. "She's the one who tamed our Franco," one man said with a knowing smile. We'd begun to think he was married to the business. "Sophia tames nothing," Franco corrected smoothly. "She simply reminded me there are things worth protecting beyond territory and profit." I navigated the evening with careful observation, learning the rules of this world through watching how Franco moved through it. The deference people showed him, the careful way they phrased questions, the understanding that some topics were off limits. By the end of the night, I'd fielded polite inquiries about my background with practiced vagueness, and smiled through implications I pretended not to understand. "You were perfect," Franco said in the car ride home, fingers threading through mine. "They expected you to be intimidated or out of your depth. Instead, you held your own. I survived 8 months with Ryan. Your associates are dangerous, but at least they follow rules." His expression darkened at the mention of Ryan, but he simply lifted my hand to kiss my knuckles. "You'll never have to survive anything again. From now on, you live." Living, I discovered, meant finally pursuing dreams I'd set aside. Franco noticed me researching business management programs one afternoon, and by the next morning had enrolled me in an online degree program through a prestigious university. "I can't afford. Consider it an investment in our future. You're brilliant, Sophia. You should have the credentials that prove it." The studies gave me purpose beyond healing, beyond adjusting to this new life. I dove into coursework with the same determination I'd once applied to survival, finding satisfaction in learning that had nothing to do with fear or necessity. Megan flourished too. Her therapy sessions showed real progress, the nightmares becoming less frequent, her smiles coming easier. She'd started calling Franco Uncle Franco naturally, and I watched their relationship develop with something warm and grateful settling in my chest. "Giuseppe says I have natural talent," Megan announced one afternoon, flour dusting her nose. "He thinks I could be a real chef someday if I want." "What do you want?" Franco asked, genuine interest in his voice as he always showed with her. "I want to be like you and Mom. Someone who makes sure people are safe and have good food, and don't have to be scared." She said it so simply, like combining Franco's protection with culinary care was the most natural ambition in the world. 2 months after that night at the hospital, Franco prepared dinner himself, sending Giuseppe home early and setting the dining room with candles and wine that probably cost more than my old monthly rent. "What's the occasion?" I asked, smoothing down the dress I'd chosen, suddenly nervous. 2 months since you came to stay, since everything changed." He pulled out my chair, ever the gentleman despite the danger that lived under his skin. I wanted to mark it properly. The meal was simple but perfect. Pasta he'd made himself with Giuseppe's patient guidance. Bread still warm from the oven. Wine that tasted like liquid gold. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as naturally as it always did between us. After dinner, after the dishes were cleared and Megan was asleep upstairs, Franco led me to the library where a fire crackled in the hearth. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handed me one, and then just looked at me with an intensity that made my skin warm. "Sophia, I need to ask you something and I need you to answer honestly." My heart hammered. "Okay. Are you ready for this? For us? Completely?" His voice was steady, but I could see the vulnerability underneath. "Because I've been patient. I've given you space to heal. But I can't pretend anymore that I don't want you in every way possible." Heat flooded through me, desire mixing with nervousness. "Franco, It's been years since I've been with someone I actually wanted. Ryan. That was obligation and survival. Before him it was David, and he died 8 years ago. I'm nervous about whether I'll remember how to be with someone who actually cares about me." He set down his wine and crossed to where I stood, hands framing my face with devastating gentleness. "Then we'll figure it out together. I'm not expecting perfection, Sophia. I just want you, however that looks. I want this too. I want you." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'm ready." Franco kissed me slowly, thoroughly, like he had all the time in the world. His hand slid down to my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt years of loneliness and fear finally beginning to crack open into something new. We made our way upstairs, to his room, to the bed that had been waiting for this moment. He was careful with me, attentive in ways that made tears prick my eyes, and when we finally came together it felt like more than just physical intimacy. It felt like 2 people choosing each other despite every reason they shouldn't work. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Contentment. The understanding that I'd found something I thought was lost to me forever. "I love you," Franco murmured against my hair. In case there was any doubt. No doubt. I pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "I love you too." The next morning, I woke early and slipped out while Franco still slept. I drove to the cemetery where David was buried, something I hadn't done in months. The guilt I'd been carrying about moving on finally demanded to be addressed. I stood at his grave in the early morning light, reading the inscription I'd chosen 8 years ago. "David Mitchell, beloved husband and father, hero who served with honor. I found someone," I said quietly to the marble stone. His name is Franco, and he's nothing like you. He's dangerous and complicated and exists in a world you spent your career fighting against. But David, he saved us. He saved me and Megan when I couldn't save us myself. Tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't bitter anymore. I'll always love you. You gave me the best years of my life, and you gave me Megan. But I can't stay frozen in grief forever. I think you'd understand that. I think you'd want me to be happy again, even if it's with someone you might not have approved of. I stayed a while longer, talking to memories of the man I'd lost, making peace with moving forward. When I finally drove back to Franco's mansion, it felt lighter somehow. Not forgetting David, but allowing him to be part of my past, rather than a weight anchoring me there. Franco was awake when I returned, standing in the kitchen with coffee and concern in his eyes. Where did you go? To visit David's grave. To tell him about you, about us. I accepted the coffee he offered. I needed to make peace with moving on. Understanding softened his features. And did you? Yes. I realized that loving you isn't betraying him. It's just different chapters of the same life. Franco pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Thank you for telling me. We were interrupted by Megan appearing in her pajamas, hair wild from sleep, taking in the scene with knowing eyes far too old for 12. So, are you guys going to get married? She asked bluntly. Because Giuseppe says Uncle Franco looks at you the way his papa looked at his mama, and they were married for 50 years. Franco laughed, surprised and genuine. Giuseppe discusses my personal life with you? He discusses everything with me. He says I'm a good listener. She climbed onto a bar stool, stealing a piece of fruit from the counter. But seriously, are you getting married? Franco looked at me, something warm and promising in his eyes. Would you want that, Piccola? If your mother and I decided to make this official? Obviously. You already act married anyway. Might as well make it legal so I can have a real family again. The simplicity of childhood logic, cutting through complexity to essential truth. Franco and I exchanged glances over Megan's head. Conversations we hadn't yet had suddenly laid bare by a preteen's directness. I have plans, Franco told Megan seriously. But these things take time to do properly. When I ask your mother to marry me, it'll be special, not rushed. As long as it happens, Megan said with satisfaction. Also, can we have pasta for breakfast? Giuseppe says Italians do that. As Franco moved to prepare food and Megan chattered about her therapy session yesterday, I leaned against the counter and watched them. This impossible family we were building from trauma and protection and love that had no business working, but somehow did. 2 months ago, I'd been broken and bleeding. Now I was whole in ways I'd forgotten were possible. And somewhere between survival and safety, I'd found a future worth believing in again. 4 months passed in what felt like a dream I kept waiting to wake from. Franco and I settled into a rhythm that felt remarkably normal despite the extraordinary circumstances. Mornings with coffee and Megan's chatter about school, evenings reviewing my coursework while he handled business. I chose not to examine too closely, nights wrapped in each other confirming that what we'd built was real. The foundation became my purpose beyond family. Franco had established it quietly, a charity focused on helping women escape domestic violence, and he'd asked me to manage it. At first I'd been hesitant, wondering if I was qualified, but he'd simply said, "You survived what they're surviving. That makes you more qualified than any degree." I threw myself into the work with determination I hadn't felt in years. We provided emergency housing, legal assistance, job training, everything I'd needed when I was trapped with Ryan and too afraid to ask for help. Each woman who walked through our doors felt like a piece of my own story being rewritten with a better ending. Megan had grown too, no longer the terrified child hiding in closets, but a confident preteen who debated politics with Giuseppe and challenged Franco's opinions on everything from food to philosophy. Watching her blossom made every difficult choice worth it. She called me Dad today, Franco told me one evening. Voice rough with emotion, we were alone in his study, while Megan did homework upstairs. Not Uncle Franco, just Dad. Completely casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against my palm. How did that feel? Terrifying. Perfect. Like I've been given something precious I don't deserve but will protect with everything I have. You deserve it, I said firmly. You've been more of a father to her in 6 months than Ryan ever attempted to be. That particular Tuesday started like any other. I left the foundation office around 5, my security detail trailing at a discreet distance as always. Franco's precautions had become so routine I barely noticed them anymore, just accepted that this was the price of loving a dangerous man. I was halfway to my car when I felt it, that primitive warning that something was wrong. The parking garage was too quiet, the usual ambient noise missing. My security guard, Marcus, noticed too, his hand moving toward his jacket in a gesture I'd learned meant weapon. Mrs. Bellini, get behind me. I'd barely processed the title he used, the assumption of marriage that had become common among Franco's people, when 3 men appeared from behind vehicles. Not Marcus's backup, strangers with hard faces and harder intentions. Everything happened fast. Marcus drew his weapon, shouting for me to run. I did, heels clicking frantically on concrete as I sprinted toward the exit. Behind me, gunshots. The sharp crack of violence I'd only heard in movies. My phone was in my hand, Franco's number dialing automatically, my security training kicking in through pure adrenaline. Sophia? His voice answered immediately. Garage? Foundation office? Marcus said run. I gasped, not slowing, hearing footsteps behind me getting closer. Franco's voice went cold and lethal. Keep running. Anthony's 2 blocks away. I'm coming now. Stay on the line. I burst out of the garage into afternoon sunlight just as Anthony's familiar black SUV screeched to a stop beside me. He had the door open before the vehicle fully stopped, pulling me inside with professional efficiency while still maintaining his weapon in the other hand. Are you hurt? No, but Marcus, backup's handling it. Mr. Bellini's orders are to get you home immediately. The drive back felt eternal and instant simultaneously. By the time we reached the mansion, Franco was already there, having apparently broken every traffic law to arrive before us. He had me out of the vehicle and in his arms before Anthony could fully park, hands running over me checking for injuries with barely controlled panic. I'm fine, I kept repeating. Franco, I'm fine. They didn't touch me. They tried to take you. His voice shook with rage I'd never heard before. They knew your schedule, knew your route, planned this specifically to grab you and use you against me. The implication sank in slowly. This wasn't random violence. It was calculated. An attack on Franco through the people he loved. Inside, Franco made calls while I sat on the couch trying to process what had happened. Megan appeared from upstairs, took one look at my face, and came to sit beside me without asking questions. Just pressed against my side, offering wordless comfort that made my eyes burn. Russian crew, Franco said finally, phone tucked away, his expression carved from stone. The same family I've been negotiating territory with for months. They thought taking you would give them leverage. Did they hurt Marcus? He's alive. Wounded but stable. He did his job protecting you. Franco crossed to where Megan and I sat, kneeling down so he was at eye level with both of us. This is my fault. My world touching yours in exactly the way I promised to prevent. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. This is on whoever decided I was a valid target. What happens now? Now I handle it. Permanently. The promise in his voice was absolute and terrifying. But first I need to know if you want out. If this is too much. If you'd rather take Megan and go somewhere safe where my enemies can't use you against me. The question hung heavy between us. This was the reality check I'd always known was coming. The moment where loving Franco meant accepting real danger beyond theoretical acknowledgement. Do you want us to go? I asked instead of answering. God, no. But I want you safe more than I want you with me. Then make us safe. I reached for his hand. I'm not leaving, Franco. What we have, what we've built, it's worth fighting for. But I need you to handle this threat the way only you can. Something shifted in his expression. Relief and determination mixing. It'll be handled within 48 hours. I'm making calls tonight that will ensure the Russians understand you're completely off limits. What kind of calls? The kind you're better off not knowing details about. Legal pressure, strategic alliances, demonstrations of power that make further attempts inadvisable. He touched my face gently. No unnecessary violence. but absolute certainty that this never happens again. 2 days later, Franco came home early with news that the Russian situation had been resolved through what he described as mutual understanding and strategic repositioning. I didn't ask for specifics, just accepted that whatever he'd done had worked. That evening, after Megan was in bed, Franco found me in the library where I'd been trying to read, but mostly just processing everything that had happened. "I've been thinking," he said, settling beside me on the couch. "About the business, about risks, about what I'm willing to compromise on." He took my hand, threading our fingers together. "I can't walk away completely. It doesn't work that way. But I can reduce my involvement in the more dangerous aspects, delegate more, be more strategic about which battles I fight. Franco, I'm not asking you to change your entire life for me. I know, but I'm asking myself if I want to. And the answer is yes." He pulled me closer. "You and Megan are my priority now. That means making choices that keep all of us safer, including stepping back from operations that attract too much heat." The significance of what he was offering settled over me. This was a fundamental shift in his priorities, choosing family over empire in ways that most men in his position never would. "There's something else," Franco continued, and suddenly he looked almost nervous, an expression I'd never seen on him before. "Sophia, we've been building a life together for 6 months now. You sleep in my bed, raise your daughter in my home, manage my foundation, and face down threats from my enemies without flinching. At some point, we need to acknowledge what this actually is." My heart started racing. "What is it?" He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box that made my breath catch. "A commitment. A future. Everything I never thought I'd want until I found you bleeding in my foyer and your daughter washing my dishes at 2 a.m. Franco opened the box, revealing a ring that was elegant and understated, exactly what I would have chosen if asked. "Sophia Mitchell, will you marry me? Will you let me adopt Megan officially and make us a real family by every legal and moral definition?" Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat. "Yes. Yes to all of it." He slid the ring onto my finger, then kissed me with a tenderness that contrasted beautifully with the danger he represented to the rest of the world. "There's one more person we need to ask," I said, when we finally broke apart. We found Megan in her room, supposedly asleep, but actually reading under the covers with a flashlight. She looked up guiltily when we entered, then saw our faces and sat up straight. "What happened? Is everything okay?" Franco sat on the edge of her bed, suddenly looking vulnerable in ways that made my chest ache. "Megan, I asked your mother to marry me tonight and she said yes. But before we make it official, I need to ask you something important." Megan's eyes went wide, darting between us with barely contained excitement. "I'd like to adopt you," Franco continued. "Legally make you my daughter, give you my name if you want it, be your father in every way that matters. But only if that's something you want too." For a moment, Megan just stared at him, processing. Then she launched herself at Franco, wrapping thin arms around his neck and bursting into tears. "Is that a yes?" he asked gently, holding her carefully. "Yes," she sobbed against his shoulder. "Yes, I want you to be my dad. Real dad, not just the person Mom's dating. Can I really have your last name? Megan Bellini." Franco tested the sound. "It suits you." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. When does this happen?" "The adoption paperwork starts tomorrow," I said, sitting on her other side. "The wedding will take a few months to plan properly." "Can Giuseppe make the food?" Megan asked immediately. "And can I wear whatever dress I want, not some frilly thing?" Franco laughed, the sound genuine and free. "Giuseppe will make whatever you want, and you can wear anything that makes you happy." After Megan finally fell asleep, excitement exhausting her, Franco and I stood in the hallway outside her door. "We're really doing this," I said softly. "Getting married, becoming a real family. We've been a real family for months," Franco corrected. "We're just making it official now." He pulled me close. 6 months ago, you were hiding from a man who hurt you. Now you're managing a foundation, earning your degree, and agreeing to marry someone arguably more dangerous than your abuser ever was. You're nothing like Ryan, I said firmly. Ryan used his power to hurt people weaker than him. You use yours to protect people you love. That's the difference that matters. We stood there in the quiet hallway, holding each other while Megan slept peacefully nearby, and I marveled at how completely my life had transformed. From that desperate night at 2 a.m. to this moment of choosing forever with full knowledge of what that meant. Giuseppe found out about the engagement the next morning and immediately declared he would teach Megan his family's special pasta recipe, the one reserved for important Bellini celebrations. Every woman in this family must know how to make it, he proclaimed. It's tradition. I watched Megan and Giuseppe work together in the kitchen, Franco observing from the doorway with an expression of contentment I'd never seen before. We'd somehow taken 3 shattered lives and stitched them into something that almost, impossibly, resembled a family. No regrets? Franco asked quietly, coming to stand beside me. Not one, I answered honestly. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner, that you had to suffer before finding your way here. Maybe we both needed to survive what we did to appreciate what we have now. 6 months from terrified to engaged, from broken to whole, from surviving to actually living. It was an impossible journey, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it. 1 year, 365 days since that rainy night at 2 a.m. when everything changed. I woke in Franco's bed, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked gardens where I'd soon be married, and felt a peace so profound it almost frightened me with its completeness. You're awake early, Franco murmured beside me, pulling me closer against his chest. Nervous? Excited? There's a difference. I turned to face him, tracing the line of his jaw. A year ago, I was broken and terrified. Today, I'm marrying the man who saved me, and choosing a future I never thought I'd have again. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone in that gesture that had become his signature tenderness. You saved yourself, Sophia. I just gave you somewhere safe to do it. The ceremony would be small, intimate, exactly what we wanted. No grand affair that would draw attention Franco's associates didn't need. Just the people who mattered gathered in our garden to witness us making official what had been true for months. Giuseppe had been cooking for 3 days, determined that every dish be perfect. Anthony and the security team had transformed the garden into something magical, with lights and flowers while maintaining the discreet protection that was now just part of our lives. Even Megan's therapist would be there, the woman who'd helped my daughter heal enough to embrace this new family without fear. I should go, I said reluctantly. Apparently it's bad luck for you to see me before the ceremony. I don't believe in luck. I believe in choices, and I chose you. But he released me anyway, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Go get ready to become Mrs. Bellini. I found Megan in her room, already dressed in the dark red dress she'd chosen herself, not the frilly flower girl confection traditional weddings demanded, but something elegant and mature that suited the young woman she was becoming. You look beautiful, baby, I said from the doorway. She turned, and I saw tears in her eyes. Mom, are you happy? Really, truly happy? I crossed the room to sit beside her on the bed, more than I ever imagined being again. Why are you crying? Because a year ago we were so scared and hurt, and Ryan was still out there making us afraid of everything. And now you're marrying Franco, and we're safe, and I have a real dad who actually wants me. She wiped her eyes. Sometimes I'm scared I'll wake up and it'll all be gone. Oh, sweetheart. I pulled her close. This is real. Sometimes terrible things have to happen before good things can find us. But you never, ever should have had to accept abuse hoping for something better after. We got lucky, impossibly lucky, but that doesn't make what Ryan did okay. I know. Dr. Martinez explained about that, about not romanticizing trauma. Megan pulled back, suddenly looking much older than 12. But I'm still glad Franco found us. Even if the way it happened was awful. Me too, baby. Me too. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon, when the light would be golden and perfect. I dressed in the simple white gown I'd chosen, elegant without being ostentatious, with my hair loose the way Franco preferred. Looking at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked different physically, but because the fear was gone from my eyes, replaced by something that looked remarkably like joy. Giuseppe knocked softly before entering, his eyes already wet. Signora Sophia, you are beautiful. Like an angel Franco does not deserve, but I am grateful he found anyway. Thank you, Giuseppe. For everything, not just today, but every day since we came here. You and Piccola Megan. You are family now. Real family. He offered his arm. Come. It is time. Franco is waiting, and he is very nervous, though he pretends not to be. The garden was transformed. White chairs arranged in neat rows, flowers everywhere, and at the end of the aisle stood Franco in a black suit that made him look devastatingly handsome and dangerous all at once. But his eyes when he saw me were soft, vulnerable in ways the rest of the world never got to see. Megan walked first, carrying flowers with careful concentration, taking her role as only bridesmaid seriously. Then Giuseppe walked me down the aisle, giving me away in the absence of my father, who'd passed years ago and would have either hated or reluctantly respected Franco. I'd never know which. You look perfect, Franco whispered, when I reached him, taking my hands in his. Thank you for choosing me. The ceremony was short, the officiant speaking about commitment and choice, and building families from love rather than obligation. But it was the vows that mattered, the ones Franco and I had written ourselves. Sophia, Franco began, his voice steady, but his hands trembling slightly in mine. 1 year ago you came into my life bleeding and terrified, and something in me shifted permanently. You showed me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to heal. You taught me that some things are worth more than power or control, that vulnerability isn't weakness when shared with someone trustworthy. I promise to protect you and Megan with everything I have, to be honest even when the truth is ugly, to choose both of you over business and territory and everything else that used to define my life. I love you completely, and I will spend the rest of my life proving you were right to trust me. I blinked back tears, trying to keep my voice steady. Franco, you gave me safety when I had none, protection when I desperately needed it, and love when I thought I'd never feel it again. You showed Megan what a real father looks like, taught me that power doesn't have to mean pain, that dangerous men can also be gentle with the people they love. I'm not naive about who you are or the world you live in, but I choose it anyway, because being with you is worth whatever complications come with it. I promise to stand beside you, to trust you even when it's difficult, to build a life with you that honors both of our pasts while creating something new for our future. I love you, and I choose you, every single day. When Franco kissed me, sealing vows we'd made with complete honesty about who we were and what this meant, I heard Giuseppe crying quietly, and several of the security team clearing their throats suspiciously. We were married, officially, legally, irrevocably united. The reception was perfect in its simplicity. Giuseppe had outdone himself with food that made everyone groan with pleasure, wine flowed freely, and toasts were made that ranged from heartfelt to hilariously inappropriate from some of Franco's associates, who clearly weren't used to family-friendly events. The highlight came when Megan presented the dish she'd spent weeks perfecting, carbonara made exactly to Giuseppe's exacting standards. She carried it to our table with such pride, placing it before us like an offering. I made this myself, she announced. Giuseppe only helped a little. He says every Bellini woman needs to know the family recipes, so I learned. Franco's eyes were suspiciously bright as he tasted it. Perfect, figlia mia. Absolutely perfect. The casual Italian endearment. My daughter, made Megan's entire face light up. The adoption had been finalized 2 weeks ago, making her Megan Bellini officially, but hearing Franco claim her so naturally still made her glow. As the sun set and lights came on throughout the garden, Franco stood to make a toast. To family, he said simply, his glass raised. Not the one we're born into, but the one we choose. To Sophia, who took a terrifying leap of faith. To Megan, who showed me what it means to be a father. To all of you who've supported us building something impossible. Salute. Salute, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. Later, much later, after guests had left, and Giuseppe had finally stopped fussing over cleanup, the three of us ended up in the garden under a sky full of stars. Megan had fallen asleep against Franco's shoulder, exhausted by excitement, and he carried her effortlessly.